The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to our Turning Data into Measurable Business Insights, Accessing Data in the Cloud webinar. This is the third and final webinar in our Sharperlight Business Intelligence and Reporting series. I'm Emma Riley, Marketing Manager at Eclipse, and I'm joined this morning by Donald Owine of Firelight Software International. So to begin with, there'll be some brief introductions followed by a solution demonstration which will take around 30 minutes, and then there'll be room for some questions and answers at the end. So to begin with, some background information about Eclipse. The company was established in 1987. We have been helping organisations streamline accounting and finance processes for over 30 years. We have worked with more than 2,000 organisations in over 70 countries. The solutions and services we provide include accounting and financial management, budgeting and forecasting, business intelligence, dashboards and reporting, which is the area we'll be focusing on today, financial close management and process automation, and finally, spend control and e-procurement. And on to Firelight Software International. The company was established in 2007. They are the author of the Sharperlight software. The Sharperlight software is fast to implement. It is low maintenance and a highly flexible reporting and BI platform. And with Sharperlight, users can access data across multiple enterprise systems in real time. They can create personalized dashboards and report packs. And finally, there is a powerful engine and integration framework. I'll now pass you over to Donald, who will provide an overview of the solution.
Thank you, Emma. Okay, so I'm sharing the screen. So far in the webinar series, we've actually looked at the query builder and we've looked at the Excel add-in that Sharperlight provides. And this one specifically is around the web and how you can use Sharperlight as a web-based reporting tool and how you can access information in the cloud. So I'm going to start with some queries that we created in the very first webinar. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Publisher and use that as the vehicle to actually take these queries and make them available in the web. So I guess the key concept around Sharperlight is it's underpinned by using web services. So it uses web services to connect to systems and extract information out. It also uses a web service to actually provide information as a reporting layer. And to provide that information, it actually has the ability to store a catalogue of web-based reports. And that catalogue of web-based reports is exactly what you're looking at now. So it's basically Publisher is the shared catalogue of web-based reports. Now, what I'll do is I'll start off and I'll just create what we call a published query. And the first building block for a published query is actually the query. So I'm opening up the query builder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to import one of the published queries that we actually created previously. So I actually saved it onto my disk for exactly this purpose. And we'll open it up. So this query is effectively pulling information out of Dynamics GP, the account transactions table. It's got a number of filters, so it's filtering the information. And we're only outputting 3 columns. So we're actually outputting the account segment, the account description segment, or description for the account segment, and the amount field. And if I was to just preview this data here, you can actually see a very simple little preview pane. So that is the query that I want to make available on the web. So I've brought it in. If I say OK, it's actually taking that query and saving it into this published query. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a group and a name. So I'm just going to call it sales, and I'm going to call it sales analysis. And I'm going to say OK to that. So I've got my query now saved, and it's refreshing just to give me an updated list of all my published queries. Okay, so that's my query. And what I can do is I could actually go directly to that query in the web by just saying view report, and it'll actually open up a web browser. So it'll go directly to our web service address. It'll recognize the name of that published query, and it'll actually return it in the web. So I'll just submit it so we just extract some data, and then I'll explain some of the concepts. So as a web report, at the very top of the page, you've got what we call the prompt bar, where all the filters are stored or available. You then, below that, have the reporting pane. So the reporting pane can be a table, could be a chart, could be a pivot table. They're all available through published queries, so you can actually define different output types. But what you've got here is the default output, which is a table, so it's HTML5 table. And that sort of content will work on any sort of web browser that supports HTML5. So it'll work on an iPhone, it'll work on an Android device or a tablet, and obviously it'll work on a whole range of different desktops. And because it's a zero footprint browser-based front end, it means that an audience of users can come in and very easily consume this sort of information without a hell of a lot of training. That's kind of the key idea around the web front end, that the adding into Excel, well, to use any sort of Excel-based content, you probably need to understand how Excel works, whereas a web browser is pretty much a universal vehicle nowadays, and it's fundamentally very easy to actually use. So by going in here, changing some of the filters, so if you wanted to change, let's say, for example, the account number, just press the wrong button. Okay. If I wanted to change the account button, you've got little lookup buttons next to each field, and it'll actually give you a list of the different accounts. Now, this database here has a limited, there we go, so the account descriptions are not filtered onto everything, but I can go through and I could change this and it'll actually update the filter. Or equally, I could just go in and actually modify that if I wanted to. So very, very straightforward in that respect. The other thing that you actually get through a web-based interface is, even though I'm returning a table, I can very easily just say, well, I'd actually like to see that as a chart. So it just regenerates that table as a chart. So there's a web-based charting engine built into Sharperlight. It's HTML5. So it allows you to then present your content in a number of different ways and a number of different chart types if you want. And when I touch on dashboarding, it really comes into its own, because you can build dashboards with dashboard tiles with different elements of content. You can have tables and charts and gauges and dials all on the one dashboard. Anyway, just going back to this table. So we're looking at this filter bar at the top, and we've got some filters there that, you know, we don't really want to change, or maybe we don't want people to be able to see. So if I go up here, I'll go back to the original published query that I started with, and I'm actually going to modify that query. So I'm going to go in and edit the query, and what I'm going to do is hide some of the filters. So let's say, for example, I want to hide the history, and I'm going to hide the account type, and I'm going to hide the account number, and I'll say OK to that. If I say apply to this and I refresh my page, you can actually see that that change has immediately taken effect. And I guess it's probably one of the important things to understand is, even though I'm running these reports over a demo database, which obviously nobody's entering any data into, in a live environment, you make changes to these web reports and you refresh it. It picks those changes up immediately. And equally with the data, if somebody enters data into the underlying system and you refresh it, you see the effect of that change immediately. So it is a live query engine presented in the web with its own filters and the ability for the end user to refresh it whenever they want. And I think that's probably a key thing to take away, is that concept of real-time reporting, that you can bring up a report like this and hit submit, and it's returning the data there and then. It's exactly what they were actually expecting. So I'll go back to the report. Now, there's a couple of things to consider around web reporting. In the previous webinar, I talked about, the functionality in Excel, and we talked about a concept called drill down. So drill down is a concept where you can slice and dice the data, so you can basically drill into it. So for web-based reporting, we approach it a little bit differently, and we've got a concept where we talk about drill through. So a drill through is really a way of structuring how somebody goes in and analyzes the data. So I can associate to a query multiple drill throughs, and I can name them. I'll go in and I'll just quickly create a drill through. So effectively, a drill through is a query from a parent query. So it's a query within a query. Now, relating back to that parent query, it doesn't have to be the same table. You could actually drill through into another system or another table, or the same table but at a different sort of level. So you've got a lot of flexibility on how you actually build up your drill throughs. And the key to actually building these drill throughs is you're actually matching or marrying up the filters and the outputs from the parent query into the child query. So you're actually tying them together based on their filters and outputs. So I'm just going to output the period and our amount. Say OK. So I've given it a name. I've got my query name, my drill through name there. And if I do preview here, I can actually see that I've got the drill through there. So drill through flows throughout the whole suite. So if you add a drill through, you can access it through the preview pane. You can also access it into Excel. But specifically in the web, that's where it really actually comes to its own. So if I then apply that, I refresh my page, I resubmit it. So it's picking up that little change that I've made. So now when I actually look at this report, right-hand click, you can see that I've got that drill through now associated to that. Now, if I click on that drill through, it'll actually take me through to nothing, which then suggests to me that I've done something wrong with my drill through. And I'll just quickly have a look at it. That's what you always want in a presentation. Really? Good. Account, company. Aha, so I'm using the account segment, not the account number. So I just linked it to the wrong thing. Yes, again. Yep. So I just linked it to the wrong filter. So I go to that, apply that, refresh that. Again. And there you go. So it's actually a slice of information. So obviously for that row that we're actually looking at, there is only one period of information that's actually being returned because it's the total amount. But if there was multiple periods there, the actual drill through would actually have multiple rows actually coming out. So effectively it's a linked report. So by clicking on the drill through, it then goes to that linked report and extracts that in another tab. The other interesting thing with the drill through, which really kind of adds to that value, is once you've got, jumping around a little bit, here we go, open this up again, just change the chart style of the chart. If you chart it, you have the drill through capable on the chart. So the drill through is accessible irrespective whether it's a table or it's actually a chart, which is really kind of adds to the value. And it's a very simple sort of process of adding these drill throughs. And for end users who've got limited training on it through the web, it allows a very simple way, a concise way of them actually accessing and pulling out some information very easily. So the next thing I just wanted to do is say, okay, so we've built that little bit of that data, we've built that little chart. But what I would also like to do is actually turn it into a dashboard. So what I'm going to do is open up our index page. So this is the index page for the SharperLite service. And what I particularly want to do here is I actually want to go and actually create a dashboard. So I'm going to create a dashboard here and now. So our dashboarding capability is all web-based. So you basically build the dashboards through the web. So I'm going to create a new dashboard, which it's just done. And it just refreshes that page. It gives me a list of all the dashboards, and that's the one that I've just created. If I click on that dashboard, it takes me to a page. So our dashboards are all driven around effectively a web page. And my first tile, so I have the page and then I have my tiles. So I'll give it a name. Now the content, now you can put content in from different websites. So you could put a web address, a HTTP, HTTPS, URL. But more often than not, people actually go in and take the content out of published queries. So that query that I just created, I'm actually going into it and saying, okay, I want to use this in my tile. If I hit save on this, now because the chart's a little bit bigger, I'm going to actually make the area a little bit bigger. I'm just going to open it and save it again, which is then going to force it to refresh. So there you go. So you can actually see that chart sitting in a tile. And you still have the drill down capability on that chart, even though it's in a dashboard page. Now, I say it's a dashboard page. How do we know that? Well, each tile is effectively a placeholder in its own right. So you can actually add multiple tiles to a dashboard page, and you can have different elements of content all being returned in different tiles. And you can pull information from multiple systems all into the one dashboard. And then that's kind of really where it actually comes into its own. Okay, so we've built our little report, and what I would like to do is just go back to Publisher, and I'm going to go through the process. I'm going to create another report. So another one, and again, I'm going to use one of the reports that we created previously. So in this case, I'm importing a report that I've already created, but normally with Publisher, you would actually say, well, I want to build a report, and you would actually create it in Publisher. So you basically use that as the vehicle for generating the report. Now, this example is an actual to budget example. So it's actually bringing out your actuals and budgets and returning a variance. Okay. So I'll say okay to that, which is good, and I'll give it the same group. It is the sales, so it is a sales. Actual budget. Okay. Now, what I'm interested in this example is I'd like to actually split it onto multiple sheets based on the departments. So instead of actually going with the vanilla report, I'm actually going to say, well, I'd like to output the department code. That'll become the filter. And one of the options that I have available is I can actually say, split it by one of the filters. In this case, I want to split it based on department, and it's going to generate a total for that as well. Hit apply to that. And this time, instead of actually using the view the link, I'm actually going to go to the link tab and take a copy of that report, the actual URL. I'll go to my web page. I'll just go up here and I'll just paste it. You can see there. So by having that web address, you could actually put that into an email and send it to somebody and say, okay, well, this is the web address for you running a report. Just hit the submit button, and there you go. Okay. Now, that little change that I made is that original report is now split out based on the different departments. So every time I click on one of these tabs, it will actually return the information for that specific department. And then there's a total tab at the very bottom, which combines them all together. Now, the layout of lots and lots of filters, as we showed you before, you can actually go through and hide some of those filters. Another way of doing it is you can actually stack your filters. So if I want to do them two abreast, if I refresh this page, did I hit apply? Hitting apply always helps. There we go. So that's all those filters. So it now looks considerably less cluttered, and you've got the filters in two columns, so they're two abreast. So that allows you to lay them out so you can hide filters if you don't want, but if you do want to have lots of filters, you still got that ability and you can lay it out. Now, the sort of things that you can actually do in Publisher is you've got a lot of control on how you want the content to appear. So on the options tab, you can actually say, well, natively, I want it to appear as a chart. A table basic or a basic table is just very, very basic HTML with no Java or no sort of automation to it whatsoever. In this case here, I'm just going to change it to a table grid, which is just a slightly different look and feel. So I'll just refresh this. There. So it's just a slightly different look to the way it actually behaves in a web browser. Go back here. Just go back into that. I'll just mention some of the other tabs there. So you've got a whole range of different options. I guess the key ones to actually mention is every report can be secured. So you can secure it to individual users or to groups of users, so they can be assigned at a report level. You've also got the ability to control, if you want to output it as a table, how it looks in the web. And if you look at this interface here, you can say, okay, well, it's a lot of it's point and click. There's no coding involved in this, and that's right. It is very much built as a very simple end user tool, so they can just go in and say, okay, well, I want to enable this, I want to change this, I want to modify that, but there's no coding. And then that's probably the most important element. Different styles of charts, so you've got a comprehensive list of different types of charts here. And again, the end user can say, well, I want it to be outputted as a chart, so I'll select that. If we go back to the general tab, we've also got control where we can actually output the filters, so the filters can actually appear above the table, and you've got control, version control, so versions on the reports and things like that. So it's quite a simple sort of interface, but it's actually very powerful. And it's designed in such a way that end users can actually build these queries and actually make them available to a larger audience. And really that larger audience needs very little training on the actual product whatsoever. Now, what we've seen here is simple examples where we've actually run reports and we've gone directly to a report, which would be like that. Or I've shown you the index page, which is kind of the main landing page for the actual web service. What we can also do is we can actually make, here we go, we can actually build menus. So we can actually combine all this content together and make it available to people in a unified front end. So in this case here, the default landing page has got a dashboard in it, but there's menus. So we've got drop-down menus here, so we can actually run any of these sort of reports. You can click on these, so each of the tab is actually a dashboard in its own right. If you want to give yourself more room, you can actually hide the banner and things like that. So this is what we call a menu. And strangely enough, menus are actually created through Publisher as well. So what we can do here is I can actually go down and say, okay, I want to create a menu. And let's say, for example, I want to create a menu that combines this and this, and maybe a couple of other things. And I say, okay. and I say the menu title. So this is going to be part of my sales menu, sales, and this is going to be finance, and then I'll have an other. I'm just going to call it homepage. And we're not going to make the group home. So it's going to generate that menu. Okay, so it's just created that menu for me. Just going to refresh publisher. Okay, so this is the menu. So what I'm going to do is take the link, copy that link, go up here, paste that link in, hit enter. There's my little menu, my sub-menus, and if I wanted to run these reports from here, I just click on it and it opens up the menu or the report underneath it. And then through Publisher, you can then control how you want that menu to look. So instead of like a menu horizontal, you can have a menu vertical or a panel with tabs and things like that. So there's multiple menu styles. And some of those relate to, you know, whether you want to do it on a mobile phone. So some of those menus are probably more conducive to a mobile phone or a small form factor sort of device. And if you need to go through and actually edit it, so you want to add things to the menu, the actual menu structure is actually, we've kept it very, very simple. What you can actually do is you can just modify it in this little grid. So it's just a little grid view where you can add menu items to it, change the links, change the names and things like that. You can delete items. So it's, in many respects, it's just like a text file or just a web grid, just going in and just changing it. And it'll reflect those changes once you accept it through the web. So it's quite a nice, simple little interface, and it allows you to build quite comprehensive landing pages with, minimum sort of training. Up to something like this, you know, where you've got a combination of different dashboards. So every tab is a dashboard, and you've got reports hanging off it, and you can have sub menus. So you can have tabs as a menu, and then you can have sub menus underneath that. So there's a number of different ways to actually visualize the data, all driven through Publisher that then makes that content available through the web service. And that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. So Emma?
Thank you, Donald. I'm just going to share my screen now. Let me know if you can see it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Please, can anyone let me know if you have any questions? You can type a question in on your keypad, or you can raise your hand. Thank you. One question has come in. Chris would like to know, can you run consolidated reports across multiple companies?
Yes, yes. So we didn't have time to kind of cover that, but one of the capabilities you've got within SharpLI is you can actually select, there's a filter for company, and you can actually open that filter up, and you can multi-select companies, and the query then becomes a union across multiple companies. So effectively it consolidates those companies together in the one query. So it's a very simple interface by just changing the lookup and saying, I want more than one company, I want multiples, and saying then run this query for multiple companies together, and it returns the aggregated result.
Okay, he's also asked, can a SharpLI data model be written to work over a custom business application?
Yes, very much so. So a core part of our business is building data models over, you know, mainstream sort of products, but the reality is customers always have other systems to the peripheral. of those sort of systems, and they want to then access it in unison with what they're using Sharperlight for. So a key tenet of the Sharperlight suite is the ability to actually build an access layer, or as we call it, data models, to go in and pull information out of those diverse systems so you can report and bring it together and display it through exactly the same interface that you've seen today. So it's basically using the same Sharperlight front end, but pulling in the information out of a HR system or a CRM system or a warehousing system. You know, provided there's an underlying database where we can access and pull the data out, you can build a custom data model over the top of it and use that as a reporting container.
Thanks, Donald. I'll just wait to see if any further questions come in.
Okay.
Donald, Jane has asked, what is the support network like in the UK with you based in Australia?
Okay. So our partners actually do first and second line support. Then the third line support actually goes to us. Now we're very fortunate, based on the actual, I guess, the simplicity of the product and the way our customers have used it, is that very few questions actually come back to us. In a lot of cases, it's actually more a question of, we would like to do such and such, how would we do it? So the core product is very much rock solid because it's very much built around the whole concept. It's self-service reporting. And if it's self-service, it can't be overly complicated and it can't be something that just breaks. So it's very robust. And our partners are trained to be able to handle the day-to-day sort of things of, oh, I've had a problem with this, what should I do? Oh, you just restart your service. Oh, or you've changed something, did you do this? No, I didn't. Oh, okay, just do that, it'll work. So, you know, our customers in the UK have very good uptime on the system, and through the support of our partners.
Thanks, Donald. No further questions at the moment. I will just leave this slide up for a moment or so, just to see if any further questions come in. Okay, well, if there are no further questions, I would like to thank you, Donald, and I'd like to thank everyone who's taken the time out this morning to attend the webinar. I hope you found it useful. And what I'll do lastly is just leave our contact details up on the screen, that if you have any details after the webinar, then you can get in touch. Thank you very much once again, and hope to see you on some of our future webinars.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.